Hoopa motherfuckers. Do it. Just whoop. Just enter the chat and immediately start whooping. I need all my friends in the chat for some spooky Bigfoot accounts. We're getting to the end of this book. It's going on a little longer than I had anticipated initially. More chapters already than Agora. More sitting around bullshitting, too. Maybe. I don't remember. Either way, we're getting to the end. I think by the time I'm done with this, we're going to be at the final chapter of the book. We're going to go more into the forensic artwork of Bigfoot and what that tells us about the creature. Still getting ready for that Gathering of the Juggalos. The Skinwalker meetup number 2 at Gathering of the Juggalos. August 3rd through 6th. Join us. Thornville, Ohio. You ever wanted to go on a vacation to Ohio? Now's your chance. No whoop whoops in the chat yet. I'm waiting, boys. Oh, I'm waiting. So, we're on to Gordon McCovey. Hoopa member. Hoopa tribe member. As they tend to be. The winters in Hoopa can be very wet, rainy, and sometimes depressing. In one of my many trips during 2007, I had hit a stretch of weather where it seemed to rain for days, no sun. During those rainy days, I would catch up on interviews with local officials, spend time in the mountains in my vehicle, and finally, catch up on my writing. It was one of those rainy writing days that I had a knock on my hotel room door. Just as I was walking to the door, the sun started to shine through the rear sliding glass door, and I thought to myself, this might be a good sign. I opened the door and found a very slender, tall, and dark-complexioned gentleman standing in the hallway, asking if I was Dave. I stated that I was, and he had said that he had a Bigfoot story that he would like to talk to me about. I asked him to meet me downstairs, and I would gather my materials. The individual introduced himself as Gordon McCovey. He stated that he was 53-year-old lifelong Hoopa tribal member, and he had heard from friends that I could be trusted if he told me about a Bigfoot sighting. Gordon stated that he had attended Hoopa High School and had spent the majority of his life working and living in the valley. He said that the farthest he had ever traveled from the reservation was Montana. He explained that he had held jobs for the tribe in timbering and logging and was presently disabled. He said that he tried to get out and walk in the woods as much as he could and has attempted to enjoy the scenery and beauty that surrounds Hoopa. The walks helped clear his mind and offered him a sense of freedom. I want to let our boy Gordon know that being disabled is not that big of a deal, because at the Gathering of the Juggalos, they will also have a special golf cart taxi service to help those with disabilities get around the park. Just to let you know, he can go to the gathering still. There's nothing stopping him. Gordon explained how he had heard stories about Bigfoot his entire life, but had never seriously thought he would see it. It was mid-May 2005 when Gordon and a female friend, Moonshade Dowd, decided to go mushrooming together. Gordon said that they were going for morel mushrooms in a burnout area just east of the Dillon Creek campground east of Soames Bar. Gordon said that he always liked to get an early start when he goes mushroom hunting, and that day in May 2005 was no exception. They left his friend's house at close to 5 a.m. and drove straight to the location. They parked their car in a small turnout on the main highway. It was approximately 5:30 a.m. Gordon said that they sat in the car for several minutes just talking and enjoying the scenery as the sun started to rise. He stated that they were both looking across the Klamath River, when they saw a huge creature appear from behind the boulders on the opposite bank. Which goes back to Bigfoot using boulders and trees and things like that for cover. The creature was walking on 2 feet at a brisk pace and swinging its arms as it moved. Gordon said that its legs were slightly bent. It had hair over its entire body, and it moved much more like a human than an animal. He described the creature as having hair or fur over its entire body, and its color as dark brown. I know y'all out there in the chat, I see them numbers. Oh, them big ass numbers in the chat. Give me a whoop whoop. I need it for my sanity. Gordon said that the creature was walking on a combination of sand and rock, and for a period of time didn't notice that they were watching it. Gordon said for some reason the creature looked in their direction, obviously saw their vehicle, and immediately picked up its pace. Gordon states that at the closest point they were approximately 200 yards from the creature, and at the farthest they were close to 300 yards. The creature continued to quicken its pace until it reached the forest edge, and then disappeared. Gordon said that he has seen many of the film clips of Bigfoot and the Bluff Creek footage. He stated that the creature moved in almost an identical manner as the creature in that film. The creature's appearance was very close to the one at Bluff Creek, but he couldn't tell if it was male or female. McCovey said that as he and Moonshade watched the creature disappear into the forest, he explained how lucky and shocked he was that they were able to see it. He states that Moonshade initially felt that he had staged the entire incident. He explained that there was no way anyone could get onto that opposite bank from anywhere near where they were located, and no sane person would get up at 6 a.m. to pull a stunt like that. Gordon said that Moonshade understood and was still in shock that they had seen the creature. There's our boy Gordon McCovey outside the 7-Eleven. That fucking jacket just screams fucking, like, rehab to me. Like, NA meetings. Got King of Whoopconda in the chat. Whoop whoop, brother. Pax Jurassicus. Whoop whoop. We got some newbies, huh? The newbies in the chat. That's what I love to see. Gives me hope. Gordon said that he is 100% positive that he and Moonshade saw Bigfoot that early morning in May 2005. Gordon signed an affidavit. Location of sighting. The location fits nicely into the portfolio for Bigfoot sightings in and around Orleans. The Dillon Creek Basin has long been a place where researchers have studied the Bigfoot phenomena. The area of Dillon Creek upstream from the Klamath is very rugged. In the past, forestry crews have become lost in that region, an unusual thing to happen to a seasoned crew, which speaks to the isolation and rugged nature of the region. The headwaters of Dillon Creek are located on an opposite ridge from the headwaters of Bluff Creek from the Go Road. The Dillon Creek area is much more rugged and less traveled than the Bluff Creek region, and is an area with far less foot traffic and fewer human visits than Bluff Creek today. This area rates very high for future study. It is off the radar of most Bigfoot enthusiasts, and yet should be a location that receives more interest. If you refer to the comments made by Tony Hacking, when I asked him what areas would be high on his list for the possible study of Bigfoot, one location he mentioned was the Dillon Creek Basin. Patrick Bateman in the chat asks, do you like Huey Lewis and the News? I'm more of a Dark Lotus guy these days. Yeah, sure, Huey Lewis can fly. The problem with Huey Lewis is I hear it, like, played in stores and shit too often. I hear it too often. If I heard it less, I'd like it more. You get what I'm saying? Paul James and Richard Nixon. A fucking former president of the United States. Get that. Fisherman. Hoopa. April or May 2005. Paul James is a close friend of Inker McCovey. Inker first took me to Paul's house the first day I met him. Paul was polite, but stated that he was exhausted from working a long day and asked if I could return the next morning, which I did. Asked Inker if I could return the next morning. Paul is a 59-year-old Hoopa tribal member who lives approximately 1/4 mile up the road from Inker and about a block downhill from Raven. Paul lives on Upper Mill Creek Road and Inker lives on the lower portion. Paul has a hill sloped downhill behind his house that leads to the local highway and eventually to Debbie Carpenter's house in the Trinity River, all in Bigfoot Alley. Paul's residence is located approximately 50 feet from the Bigfoot sighting of Kim Peters. Paul has 2 specific sightings of Bigfoot, one with 2 witnesses and one alone. As the interview started, Paul's 18-year-old son was in the room along with Paul's girlfriend of 25 years, Leslie Abbott. Paul's first sighting was in April or May 2005, approximately 12 miles downriver on the Klamath from Wychpek. Paul said that it was close to dark, maybe 8:30 p.m., when he, his son-in-law Richard Nixon, and brother were returning from a day of setting nets in the river. Richard Nixon? How do you get a name like that? Just bad timing? Damn. I don't know, it's like a cool name, honestly. The tribal members have been given the right by the federal government to net salmon and steelhead from the Klamath and Trinity rivers, usually illegal. He said that they were driving up Highway 169, nice, adjacent to the river and were on the river side of the road. He said that he was driving with his brother sitting in the front seat of the truck next to him and Richard sitting in the middle area of the cab. He said they were traveling approximately 35 miles per hour and had just made a turn. They could see that approximately 100 yards down the road, something very large was coming down the embankment, very fast. His first thought was that it must be a bear because he could see it was large, shiny black in color, and coming from the woods. Paul said his thoughts were only fleeting because he quickly realized that the creature was on 2 feet, not 4. He said that the creature also had very long arms that were swinging almost in unison as it was making its way downhill. He said that the creature's legs were bent as it was running down a very steep embankment, and then it jumped almost the last 15 feet onto the roadway. Paul said that his headlights were directly on the creature at a distance of 100 feet. He said that no man could move as swiftly down such a steep slope and jump in front of his truck as the creature did without being seriously injured or killed. Our boy Paul James. The pumping of the arms is a very common thing, as you're hearing in this book, but like even some interviews I've done, if you go way back on the channel, like a really early Bigfoot interview, I don't even remember what the hell the title was, but it was a man recounting his grandfather's story of seeing Bigfoot. And that was the most striking thing, was the pumping of the arms, and I tried to get more detail, but because it was a second-hand account, I couldn't really get it. But it's just a different sort of locomotion. Paul states that the 7-foot-tall creature stood on the road just briefly, very briefly, and then took 2 huge strides across the roadway and jumped completely off the riverside embankment, down towards the Klamath River. Paul was shocked that the creature jumped off the roadway, because the hillside leading to the river is so steep. Paul said that everyone in the truck was speechless, and really didn't say anything except stare at each other immediately after the incident. They drove straight home after the sighting. So we have another incident of a Bigfoot basically just like jumping off a cliff to its death. Like seemingly. Leslie Abbott was home when Paul and his relatives arrived back at the house. She states that in the 25 years she has known Paul, she has never seen him so excited and alive. She said that it was obvious that Paul, his son-in-law and brother, had just seen Bigfoot. Paul said that he has seen hundreds of bears and other wildlife in and around the reservation, and he has never seen anything like the creature that jumped in front of his truck. He claimed to have seen videos and photos of Bigfoot, and the creature he saw in front of his truck matches the pictures and video of Bigfoot seen on television. My friends, I am going to get some water. I forgot to grab water. So meditate on the beautiful Red Dead Redemption soundtrack while I'm gone. Richard Nixon's account. Would you trust Richard Nixon's account? We all trust Teddy Roosevelt's account of Bigfoot, but Richard Nixon's account of Bigfoot? In July 2006, I met Paul James and heard about his sighting west of Wychpek. I found Paul's sighting valuable because there were 2 other men with him in the car when it occurred. I also found Paul very credible and was quite interested in meeting the other men with him. It took me 5 months to eventually catch up with Paul's son-in-law, Richard Nixon. I had called Paul earlier in the week, and he invited me to his residence so he could review his statement and sign the affidavit. Paul also advised me that Richard would be with him, and I could interview and get his rendition of the sighting. Paul said that they were both working together doing brush clearing above the reservation, and would be home early in the afternoon. I met Paul and Richard as they pulled up into Paul's residence on Upper Mill Creek Road. Because of the number of sightings on Mill Creek, I am always observant when in that neighborhood. And since it was getting dark earlier than the summer, I was especially on the alert, but nothing was to be seen. Richard exited Paul's truck and immediately walked up to me, with Paul standing next to him. Richard introduced himself and had a very confident, positive approach that immediately struck me as a credible person. Paul gave me a big smile and handshake and said that he had missed seeing me over the summer. Paul and his family had been working in Eureka during June, July, and August while I was at the reservation. I had left him several messages, but we always seemed to miss each other. Paul invited me into his house and allowed Richard and me to sit and talk. Richard stated that he was a Hoopa tribal member and was the son-in-law of Paul. He said that they often fished together in the past and spent many nights driving along the Trinity and Klamath rivers on their way home. Richard explained that he was 42 years old and had heard many stories over the years about Bigfoot and locals claiming to see it. He said that he was always polite when listening to others' stories, but always thought in the back of his mind that they might be seeing a bear or that they might be fabricating the story. Richard said that it was in April or May 2005 when he, Paul, and Paul's brother were traveling eastbound towards Wychpek from downriver on the Klamath River. He said that they spent their entire afternoon setting nets and attempting to catch salmon. He stated that Paul was driving, and Paul's brother was in the right front seat, and he was in the middle of the back seat, with an unobstructed view through the front windshield. I asked where Paul's brother was now. Richard said that he was in a convalescent home in Eureka, seriously ill. That's one thing that keeps coming up too, is like when there's like a group sighting like this, one of the people is usually like die early or become seriously ill. I don't want to say usually, but that has come up a few times now. Spidey in the chat. What up, bro? Whoop whoop. Richard claimed they were roughly 12 miles from Wychpek at approximately 8 to 8:30 p.m. They had come around a small turn and had their headlights on when they saw a huge, dark-colored creature coming down the embankment on their left. They were traveling approximately 35 miles per hour, according to Richard. He said that he could tell by Paul's slowing of the truck and head movement that he had also witnessed the creature. Initially, Richard states that he thought he was looking at a huge bear, but those ideas quickly went away. Richard said that when he first observed the creature coming down the embankment, he thought that it was moving on 4 legs. After watching the creature longer, Richard said that it was obvious that the creature was almost running downhill on 2 legs, and then leaping the final 15 feet to the roadway. He watched the creature land on the roadway in front of their vehicle and stand on the road on 2 legs. What immediately struck Richard as highly unusual was the size of the creature's shoulders. He stated the shoulders were huge, and the creature's upper body tapered to the waistline. The creature was covered with dark-colored hair or fur, and stood erect to a height of almost 7 feet and standing like a human. Richard further explained that the creature had a face more like a human or gorilla, and did not have a snout like a bear. The creature's body reminded Richard more of a well-built human athlete than a bear. The creature stood on the roadway for a few seconds, and then leaped over the shoulder of the road and down towards the Klamath River. Richard said that he got an excellent view of the creature and is 100% positive he saw a Bigfoot. Richard Nixon at Paul James' residence. They always told me that Jinko stood for jeans Nixon can't own, but here he is, wearing Jinkos. I brought Jinkos up, I think, on the previous reading. All of these people look like they belong at the gathering of the Juggalos. I formally invite each and every member of the Hoopa tribal nation to the gathering, wearing their Jinkos. Wasteland Acolyte in the chat. Poop poop, he says. Richard explained that he had heard hundreds of stories of Bigfoot over his years growing up in Hoopa. He said he has seen specials on television about Bigfoot and has seen clips of the Patterson-Gimlin movie, and stated that in general, this is how the Bigfoot appeared to him. He didn't see any breasts or male genitalia. During the entire ride back to Paul's residence, Richard stated that they were all in a state of shock, but they all agreed that they had seen Bigfoot. I did brief Richard and Paul about the number of sightings in their immediate community. This information made them much more comfortable about going public with their sighting. So, not that it really needs to be said, but according to this book, the Patterson-Gimlin footage is essentially vindicated. It's most likely real, according to the information in this book. I was kind of skeptical that they would take like a hard stance like that, and I guess technically Paulides hasn't. But he is signing off on it. What I really want from him, I want to hear David Paulides talk about the Bluff Creek Massacre. Then I can really start to comprehend his stance. Were a troop of Bigfoots killed in that creek bed? Were they baby killers? Some native people don't want to admit they saw Bigfoot. Some are eager to talk about it, and others brag about it. Richard hasn't told many people because he is afraid of being ridiculed. He does say that he feels he has been blessed to witness the mammoth creature. Richard Nixon and Paul James each signed individual affidavits explaining their sighting, and they had each agreed to the basic facts of the sighting. Leslie Abbott, Paul's girlfriend. I'm including a short segment in Paul's sighting about his girlfriend and Kamas. Kamas is one of those issues that keeps raising its ugly head, in a manner of speaking, and there are many people who have approached me about the creature. The story doesn't seem to die, and the creature has apparently lived for hundreds of years. This story goes to the oddity of the area and the possible fact that this region of California probably holds many more secrets than outsiders realize. I know this is off the direct Bigfoot agenda, but then there are some who believe that Kamas is really just Bigfoot swimming in the river. So, Kamas is the river serpent, the giant river serpent that the Hoopa people believe in. Leslie stated that she has lived with Paul for 24 to 25 years. She said that a lot of strange things occur in their valley. She reminded me that the Hoopa Valley is one of only 2 valleys in the Northern California mountain range, the other being the Scott Valley near Fort Jones and Etna, which is east of Hoopa. Leslie said that there is an old Indian legend about a serpent that lives in the Trinity-Klamath River systems, called Kamas. She said that Kamas can be as long as 18 feet, has a horse-type head, and travels the length of both rivers all the way to the ocean. In the winter, when the waters are high, the serpent is in the river, and when the river is low in the summer, it retreats to the ocean or tidal areas. The horse-type head, which is so common in like sea serpents, lake serpents, all of that stuff. It's very Nessie-like. Leslie claimed that in August of 1998, she, Paul, and Paul's brother were out working their nets in the Klamath River, approximately 18 miles down from Weichpec. She said that was. Okay, this isn't my fault. She said was light outside, and near 8:30 p.m. Paul and his brother were approximately 100 yards downstream from her when Paul said that he heard her screaming. Paul said that both he and his brother started to move in her direction. Leslie said that she saw Kamas stick its head out of the water and slowly move downstream in Paul's direction. She stated that she was standing near Moore's Rock. The river is very deep in this area, and if a creature were to live in the river, this would be a perfect place. She said that she watched Kamas for approximately 40 seconds before it completely concealed itself in the water. She could see its body at the waterline behind it, maybe for 10 feet. It acted like a snake that was swimming down the river, except its head was the size of a horse. She stated that the head protruded out of the water approximately 1 foot. Paul validated that Leslie was hysterical, but that he and his brother didn't see anything. He also stated that Leslie told them to get out of the water. Paul has been net fishing in the Klamath and Trinity River for almost 45 years. He said that in those times, he has had nets stripped to a 5-foot diameter. He explained that there are large sturgeon in the rivers, but the sturgeon would rarely tear 5-foot gaps in the nets because there aren't that many huge sturgeon. He said that even a huge sturgeon wouldn't tear apart his nets to that extent. Both Paul and Leslie stated that over the years, many people said they have seen Kamas, but they don't personally know anyone who has ever seen it. Kamas is something that is not generally spoken about at the local cafe. Gabe Hall in the chat. David Paulides' son's death won't stop him from his ultimate pursuit of finding and fucking the biggest feet in the business. His thirst for Grassman's stinky pinkies is greater than that of a king salmon in a desert. The fuck does that mean? So I bought this vape. I'm just curious if anyone can confirm or deny. It's a Hyde vape. Is this a Sam Hyde vape? I heard Sam Hyde is selling vapes. I got this at the gas station. I was like, what are all... I'm like, hey, Indian guy who sells vapes to kids. What are all the kids buying these days? He's like, that's the cool one. The Hyde vape. Can anyone confirm or debunk whether this is a Sam Hyde vape? It's pretty good. I feel like this is made for children. This rips my lungs apart, and I don't really need, like, minty strawberries. I buy my vapes directly from Big Tobacco, thank you. Paul stated that ever since the night Leslie saw Kamas, she won't go back to Moore's Rock. He has prodded and begged her to go back, but she won't go near it. It's obvious that something in the water disturbed Leslie. The real question, was it Kamas or Bigfoot? Kamas is a creature that I have heard about from many credible Hoopa people. The alleged size of the creature, its ability to move swiftly through the river, and its possible proximity to nets arouse suspicion. I mention it here so readers can make a mental note. as it will be discussed in a later chapter. Ooh, more Kamas. It sounds like we're going directly the Kamas to Bigfoot pipeline. We're riding that bitch. I want it to be a lake serpent, or a river serpent, as it were. Yeah, Pax Jurassicus, that's right. Notorious lolly artist Sam Hyde. Location of sighting. The location of the James Nixon sighting fits geographically with my knowledge of the area. On the south side of the road are the Bald Hills Mountains, a classic location in Bigfoot hunting and a location where 3 sightings are documented in this book. There have been many sightings in that area, and it fits because of its desolation, lack of residents, and no paved roads. This would be on the coastal side of the river, and is approximately 20 air miles from the ocean. On the mountainside of the sighting is the absolute classic Bigfoot location, Bluff Creek. Bluff Creek is located 10 miles back into the Onion Mountains, and is famous in Bigfoot lore for the Patterson-Gimlin footage. If you were going to pick the perfect location to sit on a road or watch for Bigfoot crossings, this might be it. The Klamath River has a plentiful food supply of salmon and steelhead, and is an obvious water supply. The river could also be viewed as a travel route for Bigfoot should they want to quickly, efficiently, and in a stealthy manner move from the mountains to the ocean. J. Robert Alley writes in his book, Rain Coast Sasquatch, that Bigfoot has been seen many times along the Alaska coast, swimming in the ocean between islands. The ability to swim powerfully underwater is also noted in an old Haida and Tlingit stories. It is reportedly an excellent submerged swimmer with its legs mimicking a frog's movement in the water. If Alley's report from Native American tribes in Alaska and from fishermen are correct, then there is a significant likelihood that Bigfoot in California could also swim and would use the Klamath and Trinity rivers as a means to move through the area. Bigfoot swimming is a very interesting idea. I don't think apes can swim. I don't think there's any known apes that can swim. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Except for humans, which is where you get like humans evolving as like marine apes. That's why we have like webbed fingers and like our hair moves with like the flow of the water, whatever the fuck they say. Bill Whitaker in the chat says, almost every Hoopa tribal member works for the U.S. government. You're telling me that the Native Americans are feds? One interesting aspect to this sighting was that Paul had complained to me in the past about his nets being destroyed by something huge. He stated that the nets are very strong and there has been something damaging them. Paul felt that he wasn't the only one suffering the loss, and that other Hoopa people have also been victimized. He stated that the general tribal consensus was that giant sturgeon were getting caught inside and destroying the nets in an effort to escape. Maybe something else is destroying the fishermen's nets. I discussed this with Paul, the possibility of Bigfoot taking fish from the nets. He said that he really never thought about it, but it made perfect sense. He said that some of the areas where the nets were vandalized and fish taken were not near the banks of the river, and it would take a small boat to reach them. If Bigfoot could swim, we know it can, in parentheses, we know, confirmed, then it would follow that it could go into the nets in the river, take the fish, and accidentally destroy nets in the process. Boars can swim, Unity Ostara says. Could be boars. We got boars in California. We got boars all over the goddamn place. Pliny McCovey. Hoopa! July 2005. Pliny McCovey is an uncle of Inker McCovey and lives on Upper Mill Creek Road in the center of Bigfoot Alley. Raven Ulibarri lives just below. Pliny is another individual who has had Bigfoot sightings. He is older than many of the witnesses, but brings with him a sense of sincerity that lends itself to credibility. Pliny McCovey, standing in his backyard in front of the brush where he made his Bigfoot sightings. I'll mention now, if you appreciate the streams, streamelements.com/yakovalive/tip. The link is above me. The link is below me. Below me. Pliny told me that his most recent incident occurred in his backyard, and he invited me out to view the area. We went into the backyard, and he began to explain his sightings. Pliny's house sits on 1 acre on Upper Mill Creek Road with another residence just up the hillside, maybe 50 yards away. There's nothing behind Pliny's house except an empty hillside with a lot of brush that adds a very thick cover. There are several large trees that offer shade and obstruct the view over the embankment. The ridge where Pliny lives is the same ridge that gradually descends into the area where Debbie Carpenter resides, all inside Bigfoot Alley. Pliny explains that one warm summer day in the early evening, his windows were open and he heard noises in the backyard. He said that he went out and slowly made his way to the thick brush that surrounds the perimeter of his yard. He pointed out some of the large trees and grass that proliferate in the area. He said that the sounds weren't like anything he had heard before. He said they were a high-low whine or wail. The sound fluctuated to the point where it almost sounded like two animals. He moved very slowly and quietly towards the brush until he could almost hear the creatures breathing. The underbrush was fairly thick, yet he could see one large, hairy creature standing on 2 legs approximately 20 feet downhill from his location. Pliny showed me where the creature was standing, and based on the hillside angle, the creature appeared to be approximately 7 to 8 feet tall. He states that the creature he saw was covered with hair or fur, stood upright the entire time he watched it, and did not have a snout like a bear. The face was more human or ape-like. He said that he could hear something similar to a language that he couldn't understand being communicated between the creature he could see and another that was concealed. Based on the volume and tone of the communication, Pliny feels that the creature he couldn't see was smaller, maybe a baby Bigfoot, and the one he could see was the parent. That is also what comes up in the Moorhead tapes, the Samurai Chatter. You have a larger creature speaking to a smaller creature. And it's all audio, so the only way you can tell the sizes is by the sound of the voices. But that seems to be what's happening. Pliny said that he kept extremely quiet and continued to observe what he thought was continued communication between the creatures. He stated that he couldn't see the second creature, so he took another position further up his property. At this point, the larger creature heard him and immediately made a sound, and Pliny heard both creatures start to walk down the hillside. He stated that it wasn't a rapid movement, but he could tell that they were moving out of the area. Within minutes, the creatures were out of sight and the sounds stopped. The exact location where Pliny saw these creatures is important to understand. His backyard is part of a declining ridgeline of the mountain above Mill Creek, and is the ridge that eventually falls and disappears at Carpenter Lane. If you followed the path behind Pliny's house and behind the bushes, the path would lead directly to the area of the Kim Peters sighting and into the area of the Debbie Carpenter sighting. If you went uphill, you would end up across the street from the Raven Ulibarri sighting. By connecting the dots, you will see that all of these sightings have a common thread, and yet by descriptions, Debbie Carpenter saw a skinny creature, Pliny saw a large one, and Raven saw a huge creature. There have to be several different creatures in the area. Rolf Lamau in the chat, whoop whoop, brother. Pliny said that the next day after the sighting, he went further into the backyard, trying to determine what the creatures might have been doing. He stated that there is a small berry bush where they were located, and it appears they were eating berries. He told me that he could not find any footprints and didn't see any scat. He did note that in 3 months just prior to this incident, his family had lost 3 cats. He said that the cats had completely disappeared, and he can't say Bigfoot took and ate the cats, but he finds the timing of their disappearance and the sighting of Bigfoot suspicious. Pliny said that he knows that neighbors in the Mill Creek area have all had visitations similar to his. He explained that Bigfoot is understood by his people as the keeper of the mountains and a friend. Pliny signed an affidavit. Location of sighting. Pliny lives in an area of Upper Mill Creek Road that is surrounded by Bigfoot sightings. Below him, there have been sightings on an adjacent road, and as you move closer to the Trinity River, there are additional sightings. Up the hill from Pliny is the location where a Bigfoot was observed going through a neighbor's garbage, Raven Ulibarri, and across the roadway towards Lower Mill Creek are a series of sightings, Maston and McCovey. The ridgeline where Pliny resides starts in the Upper Mill Creek Basin and continues until it reaches the flats of Carpenter Lane. The time of this sighting is a little unique. Most of the sightings in this neighborhood have occurred late at night or very early morning. This sighting occurred in the morning during daylight hours. It is also unique because 2 Bigfoot were supposedly simultaneously in the area. The timid nature of Bigfoot is exemplified in the sighting as it fled upon being revealed. I have a good opportunity to investigate the hillside where Pliny observed the Bigfoot. The area is steep and has significant cover. Because of the angle of the morning sun and the thick cover, the area would have been quite shady and cool, another ideal location for Bigfoot. The area also gives the Bigfoot an easy escape route through the bushes and up the hill into a very remote mountainous area. Forensic sketch. Pliny was one of the witnesses selected to assist in completing a sketch of the creature they witnessed. I went to his residence and spoke to him about the project, and he agreed to do the sketch. On the day that Pliny was scheduled, he stated that he didn't feel comfortable, and politely declined and apologized. Getting Alf callbacks in the chat. Unity says, seriously though, Alf and Harry and the Hendersons happened around the same time. They're in the same timeline. The Alf Extended Universe. Kim Peters, preschool teacher. Hoopa. August 2005. Kim was at her residence when Inker McCovey called her and asked to go to Pliny's residence and talk to me. Inker told me that Kim was embarrassed about her Bigfoot sighting and afraid nobody would believe her. She was slightly reluctant to file a report because of public ridicule, but after hearing about the number of sightings that have actually taken place in her community, she agreed to go public. Once Kim arrived, she advised me that she was a preschool teacher for tribal members. She said that she lived just down the street from Pliny and had lived in the neighborhood for a few years. Kim said that approximately 11 months earlier, sometime in August, she was driving home from Weichpeck at 11:30 p.m. She took the shortcut up to her residence from Lower Mill Creek Road that meets the highway. She explained that this road is very dark and has no streetlights or houses until you reach the turn at Paul James' residence. She stated that she had her high beams on and was traveling close to 25 miles per hour. As she slowly reached the top of the hill, she saw something extremely large on the right shoulder of the road. The creature was standing on 2 feet, was over 7 feet tall, had huge shoulders, and had hair over its entire body. She said that she knew it was not a bear because it did not have a snout like a bear. It was standing on 2 feet, had long arms, and it had the body more of a large human than a bear. Kim said that it was a Bigfoot. Kim said that she has seen specials on television about Bigfoot and has seen photos in the press of the creature. The animal she saw on the roadway in August 2005 matched the description of the Bigfoot she has seen on television and in photos. She stated that the creature slowly moved into the trees and disappeared. She drove the short distance to her residence, went inside, and closed and locked the doors. Kim said that she has been careful to whom she tells the story because she doesn't think many people will believe her. It was hard for her to believe what she had seen. She stated that the total time for the sighting was approximately 15 to 20 seconds. Kim Peters, the night of the interview. Kim was very careful in her words and wanted to be extremely accurate with her descriptions. She was very articulate, easily understood, and extremely polite. Kim signed an affidavit. It should be emphasized here that Kim was a Bigfoot witness we found. She didn't find us. She was deeply afraid that people would make fun of her, tell her she was crazy, and say that she just saw a bear. It took both Inker and me to convince Kim to be comfortable and confident enough to come forward and tell her story in a public forum. The concerns Kim expressed exist with many Bigfoot witnesses, and goes back to the same concerns expressed by victims of crimes. It's hard enough to witness the event, but it's worse to be ridiculed for just telling people what you saw. If it wasn't for Inker and Pliny making Kim feel comfortable and reassuring her that she would not be ridiculed, this witness would never have come forward. It was also comforting to Kim that she was standing shoulder to shoulder with some of the most respected members of her community who had also witnessed Bigfoot. Location of sighting. Cat eaters, that's what Unity meant by the ALF reference. Cat eaters. My Bigfoot research in Hoopa has indicated 3 entry points into the Mill Creek subdivision. One point was from the high mountains entering behind Raven Ulibarri's residence. The second point was off the highway immediately adjacent to Mill Creek. This was the street that Mary and Inker McCovey took when they saw the Bigfoot on the highway. The third entry is the street that Kim took. This street leaves the highway and takes an immediate hard right turn, and then climbs up the top of a small hill where Paul James resides. The ride to the top of the hill is lined with berry bushes and large trees. Once at the top, the road splits, and one direction goes to Upper Mill Creek Road, and the other goes to Lower Mill Creek Road. This is probably the central point for all sightings in this region. The area below this location includes the region where Debbie Carpenter saw her Bigfoot. If you follow the sightings and locations, you could assume that the Bigfoot seen by Kim probably came from the hills behind Raven Ulibarri's residence. You could also surmise that the sighting made by Debbie Carpenter could have come from the exact area where Kim made her observation. The time of this sighting is slightly early for many of the sightings in this region. It is close in time to the sighting made by Raven, but quite early for the average sighting made in Hoopa. When Kim saw Bigfoot, all of the entry points in Mill Creek were open. There had been construction in the area temporarily closing one point, and that spread vehicular traffic entering the region into 2 basic areas. All of the traffic coming from Hoopa, a majority of all of the traffic, would enter Mill Creek from the creekside entrance, while traffic coming from Weichpeck, very few cars, would use the entrance where Kim saw Bigfoot. If Bigfoot didn't expect a lot of vehicular traffic, then the creature standing on the shoulder of the road while Kim made her approach is quite believable. The escape route that Kim saw the creature take would put the creature on the small hillside next to the highway. Forensic sketch. Look at that boy. Harvey's sketch of Kim Peters' creature seen in the Mill Creek area. Bill Whitaker says, I think the Patterson-Gimlin film is a hoax. They happened to film Bigfoot on their first try. Yeah, I don't know. I think all of, the whys and the hows it happened, you can pick that apart, but the video is very, very good. And I don't see a hoax in it personally. It's one of those things where it's like every special on TV will be like, we debunked it! But you could, see a million debunkings of that video, and they're all different. And they, conflict each other. And it's, I don't know. Seems like a fed op to me. Unity says, construction is a well-known annoyance for spiritual beings. That's true, and same thing with the Icelandic boulders. There'd be spirits in those boulders. Kim is someone who has always been afraid of the creature that she saw. Damn, that sucks. From the first day I met her until she arrived for the sketch, her fear has been consistent. She was happy to accommodate our interests in getting her sighting on paper by having Harvey draw the sketch. She came to the hotel with her daughter. Harvey's wife Gina kept the daughter busy drawing, while Harvey questioned Kim about the sighting. Kim first described the creature to Harvey as approximately 6 to 8 feet tall, with a very heavy build. She stated that she thought it was dark in color, either a dark brown or black. She said that the creature did look at her vehicle, and then turned away abruptly when the light hit it. She didn't get a great look, but could describe the body and remembered it well. Kim also states that the creature had very shaggy hair, and appeared by its build to be healthy. The last item that Kim described to Harvey was the length of the creature's arms. She stated that they were much longer than human arms, and they hung down near its knees. Harvey presented the drawing to Kim several times for slight changes and corrections. At the end of the meeting, Kim stated that the drawing was an excellent representation of what she saw on Upper Mill Creek Road. A dude do have gigantic feet. Charles McCovey, forestry worker, Hoopa. November 3rd, 2006. In the vast number of people I have met in Hoopa, few have been as reluctant to provide an interview as the tribal members of the Forestry Management Group. I have been told that many of these members have had continuous sightings throughout the valley, but several won't return calls and won't answer letters. Several people who work inside the Tribal Management Group have told me that the Tribal Forestry Management Group is concerned about Bigfoot becoming a protected species and what that designation would bring to the organization. If Bigfoot is deemed endangered, then it is possible that the tribal forestry lands could become protected, and this may have a profound effect on their ability to cut and harvest their lands. I was very fortunate to have Anchor McCovey as a close friend. Anchor convinced Charles that I was sincere and that he should grant an interview. I interviewed Charles exactly 14 days after his encounter. During Thanksgiving week of 2006, I was at my home in the Bay Area, writing notes for my previous week's trip to Hoopa. I received a phone call from an excited Anchor stating that his brother had just contacted him about a Bigfoot sighting. Anchor explained that his brother had never believed in Bigfoot, but he had just witnessed it. Anchor took a colleague and me to his brother's house on Lower Mill Creek Road. It was situated between Upper and Lower Mill Creek, somewhat set off from the creek itself. Charles' residence sits just below Paul James' residence. I met Charles after he'd spent a long day of working in the forests around Hoopa. He greeted us with a big smile and open arms. We talked in his workshop where he had been tinkering on some projects. Charles explained that he was a 54-year-old Hoopa tribal member who spent his entire life in the Hoopa Valley. He said that he played football, basketball, and baseball for Hoopa High and graduated in 1970. After graduation, he went on to the College of Redwoods, where he entered a police science program to become a police officer. He explained how he had spent his entire life hunting in the Hoopa region for bears and deer, and when hunting wasn't good, going fishing for steelhead and salmon. He said that he always enjoyed the outdoors and spent time camping in the summer and spring as often as possible. Charles McCovey, after a long day's work in the forests of Hoopa. Charles said that he was assigned to work on a team that was logging an area 4 miles above Upper Mill Creek Road, inside Bigfoot Alley. This area is a region he knows quite well. He said that he has hunted this area a lot and has taken many deer directly in the spot where they were working. He stated that it was on November 13th, 2006 at 8 a.m. when the team arrived at the location. They worked for approximately 90 minutes, cutting, clearing, and chopping wood, and decided to take a break. Charles said that he didn't know the team he was with very well, and decided to take a walk by himself up the ridgeline. He told me that he wasn't wearing any cologne or hairspray and was wearing a thick coat because there was a heavy mist and fog in the air. He said that at times there was almost a very slight sprinkle in the air. Charles walked approximately 1/4 of a mile from his crew up the ridgeline when he started to hear footsteps coming towards him, so he stopped. He stated that when he stopped, the footsteps stopped. When he started to walk again, the footsteps started again. He explained that this start and stop continued for 3 revolutions until he reached a high spot in the ground. He said he stood on top of a small shale formation and looked through the mist in the direction of the steps. He described the steps as not light and small like a deer, but loud and rough like a human or large bear. From the top of his shale perch, Charles said he was peering into the mist as the steps grew louder and louder. He could finally see a figure come out of the fog and into sight. Charles said he initially thought it was someone from his work group wearing a large coat with a hood, but that thought quickly evaporated. He said he saw a huge creature, over 7 feet tall, walking toward him. The creature was covered with hair or fur, and was walking on 2 feet like a human. He stated that the creature swung its arms as it walked and took huge strides. He guesses that the witnessed creature takes 10 to 15 strides towards him before he became very nervous and yelled at it. He said that he didn't want it to be startled by suddenly looking up and seeing him. Charles stated that when he yelled, the creature turned in several directions in an attempt to see what direction the yell was coming from. The creature couldn't turn its head to look, but had to turn its entire upper body as one unit to look in another direction. It was as though the creature didn't have a neck that could turn and allow the head to rotate. Charles didn't get close enough to identify distinctive facial features, but he could tell that it had a flat face and black shiny hair or fur over its entire body, except its face. I showed Charles the logo for California Bigfoot search, and asked him if the upper body of the creature matched the logo, and he stated that it did. He further explained that the creature's arms were very long and extended to just above the knee. The arms swung from far in front to far behind as the creature was striding toward him. He said that it did not appear that the arms were bending at the elbow as human arms would bend in the act of running. He described the legs as very thick and the hips as very large. He said that he felt that the shoulders of the creature were not huge and probably not bigger than the waistline. One interesting notation made by Charles was that he felt that the hair or fur covering the creature's feet was very long, and the hair or fur on the lower leg almost covered the feet like an umbrella as it walked. This observation has never been made before by a witness I've interviewed. Charles said that after he yelled at the creature, he thought he heard someone from his camp yell back at him. He said he turned briefly to look back at his work team and lost sight of the creature for just a few seconds. When he turned back around to look at the creature, it was gone. Charles said he couldn't believe how fast it simply disappeared. He then turned and walked directly back to the work location and said nothing to the work team members. But when he came home, he did tell family members. Charles was emphatic that he never believed in Bigfoot or other people's claims. He explained that after his sighting, his beliefs of what are out in the woods have changed forever. Charles signed an affidavit. Location of sighting. Why does the How to Hunt guy refer to Bigfoot as Sabe? Bill Whitaker asks me. Or just asks in general. As if I have, like, the perfect answer for that. I don't, and he knows that. I would say, it's just one of many indigenous names. Like, why Sabe? Well, most likely it's because the Indians close to him would refer to it as Sabe, if I had to guess. But yeah, it's just another one of those names. I feel like it's the Otter Man one. I feel like Sabe is the Otter Man, which implies an aquatic nature. Let's see. The Ojibwe Bigfoot. Where are the Ojibwe located? So yeah, it's the Ojibwe. Let's look that up real quick. Yeah, so that looks about right. Southern Canada. So if I had to guess, I would say that the Indians around him use the term Sabe. Yeah, I would recommend everybody out there, you should binge, who is it? What's his name? Bob Gimlin, but it's not the real Bob Gimlin. Bob Gymlan. And if you binge all his Bigfoot videos, you get a really good rundown of like Bigfoot as a flesh and blood creature, but he goes into a lot of those native terms for Bigfoot. PNW native term. Pacific Northwest native term. Who the fuck knows? I don't know where the fuck Steve from How to Hunt is from. Let's dox Steve right now. Let's dox him. I don't know where the fuck. He's in Canada. Loves Trump. It's a weird dude. Raven Ulibarri's residence is the closest house to this sighting. It is 4 miles down the road from where Charles' work crew was doing their forestry. The area where Charles made this sighting is also very close to a sighting of a Bigfoot print found 10 years ago near a spring, and aligns perfectly with all of the sightings on Upper and Lower Mill Creek Road. Charles inferred that there were a large number of deer in this area, and further follow-up determined large amounts of mushrooms that also proliferate, indicating that there is an abundance of food for Bigfoot on these mountains. This sighting was made directly on the ridgeline leading down to the Mill Creek neighborhood, and in the middle of Bigfoot Alley. All of the sightings along the Mill Creek Ridge and throughout Bigfoot Alley support the theory that Bigfoot is a ridge walker. Update. I had attempted to get Charles and our sketch artist together, but the schedules were never able to line up, and Charles never met Harvey. Final note, my colleague was with me the entire time Charles was questioned and debriefed. At the end of the 2-hour session, my partner told me that he felt Charles was incredibly honest and believed that he had seen Bigfoot. Chapter 6, Forensic Sketch Art. Harvey Pratt. I think we'll go into that, some of the comparisons between the sketches and some information about the artist. We'll do that next time. Hopefully that'll be the last episode. Not that I'm trying to force my way through this, but I do want to get on to other stuff. I need to know from you people in the chat whether you want to hear more David Paulides or if I should go back to spiritual stuff for a while. I'm thinking it would be David Paulides' book Tribal Bigfoot next, which is probably pretty similar to this. I feel like if I'm going to get to Missing 411, if I'm going to get to the meat and potatoes, I got to go through these appetizers first. We got to get the whole story here. Not just the story everybody knows, the same fucking 5 stories everybody's goddamn heard on Coast to Coast AM. So yeah, go to yakovalive.com, buy that merch. It helps me out bigly these days. What else? Patreon.com/yakovalive to come hang out in the Discord. Hit me up on Twitter @SkinwalkerGang. Thanks everybody in the chat. I will catch you next time. Whoop whoop.